Mark Fiorino in Philadelphia has a gun put to his head because he's open carrying within the law. Why aren't the police in jail? Now, does anybody believe here that we have a double standard of justice? Do you think that should continue? Because you know what? It could be any one of you next calling me. And believe me, Mark Fiorino is the tip of the iceberg. Because a month later, a young man was loading his car and a Philadelphia police officer pursued him into his own home because he had a firearm strapped to his hip, just like I do. It was perfectly legal. And he shot this young man in his own home because of this. I find that to be something that is not only un-American, but is detestable. Because you have a badge, because you want to enforce a policy like in Philadelphia that is going to take away a young man's life forever. You see, this isn't a technical exercise with us. This is a victimization of our state citizens as a whole. And we are moving as fast as we can to restore these freedoms. But you need to know that people's lives are on the line for this. And it has cost people dearly. Financially, and in some cases, death. Just because you carry a firearm. Or the grandmother in Indiana who was pursued by a car full of young toughs and pulls over her car in a parking lot. And she ends up having them urinate on her car, rock her car, dent her car, and she pulls her .38 out and does this. And these smart aleck young kids call the police and say, "There's a crazy lady waving a gun at us." You know what happened next? She was arrested, and she spent $15,000, and she lost. This is the value of gun control. It is a blight on the country. It is an insult to our freedoms, and it is an insult to every veteran here and in this nation who bled and lost friends defending this country. The human cost in this is outrageous. But in wrapping this up, I want to also tell you about the financial cost. We're in dire financial straits. Since 1998, in Pennsylvania, we have spent $100 million. 2/3 of that taxpayer money to control and manage the instant check system in this state that the federal government would have done for free. We have denied over 100,000 Pennsylvanians the right to possess a firearm, and nearly 2/3 of them never challenged it and do not know that they are forever banned from owning firearms for the rest of their life because they just walked away from the process. And the state police do not give people the data that representatives like Carl Metzger told them to in law whenever they challenged the forms. They thumb their nose at the law. But not to be outdone, guess how much the instant check system has cost our nation itself at the federal level? Over $10 billion. For what? You know, one of our advisors is Robert E. Sanders from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And he says that none of this works. He set criminal policy for the ATF for 24 years. He now sues his own agency because of civil rights violations. He said nothing works but putting the criminal in jail. But you have been led to believe that somehow this fancy little background check is going to discover things, when in reality the people that are being denied are the ones being denied based on a parking ticket, failure to pay child support, or what's it called? Damaging the morals of a minor because of you gave a minor a beer back in 1962, or a fist fight before a man was deployed to go to war because his brother didn't want him to go, and they call it domestic violence. That's what's in the records. $100 million here in Pennsylvania. How many criminals and how many people would be alive today if those criminals would have been put in jail? You have been lied to on an epidemic scale about gun control. How many of you have heard of the Fast and Furious scandal at the federal level? You know what that is? The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms allowed weapons to be transported and given to Mexican gangs. It has the power of bringing down the Obama administration. Thousands of firearms and dozens of police officers have been hurt. And to date, 4 have been killed by these firearms. So I would encourage you to contact your congressman and ask them when somebody is going to go to jail, meaning Eric Holder, meaning the director of ATF, meaning Hillary Clinton, because they violated the federal law called ITAR, which is $1 million fine for each firearm. This is the depth and breadth they'll go to, because the impact of this goes back to 2008 when he got elected, and he said that he wants to advance gun control, and he says we're working on it now. Because they were going to force the United Nations Small Arms Treaty through the Senate based on this transportation of firearms to Mexico and the body count. And if you read about it, you will see that they talked about increasing the body count so they could convince Congress to take action on gun control. Think about the depth and breadth of what they're willing to go to. And these reports are online with Congress, with the ISA committee. Anybody that wants it, give me an email address and I'll send it to you. Because these are things we track. But they were willing to allow people to be killed to push gun control. Why? Anybody have the answer? Power and control over the people. Because, you know, we talked about Adam talked about the Declaration of Independence, and Patrick Henry talked about it in saying, always be careful and wary of the jewel of freedom. Never let anyone approach it that will steal it from you. But unfortunately, the force of arms is the only thing that will protect it. It boils down to there are people within our government that fear each and every one of you, especially the veterans. And a Maryland congressman said just exactly that. That was what the assault weapon ban was about. Because you know what? We know how to use the guns. And he said that in an open forum. So, in closing, since I already mentioned Patrick Henry, I would like to reiterate 2 things. First, I want you to think what freedom means to you and how important it is to make sure your congressmen and your senators know your sentiments. Talk to them. Tell them you don't approve of these things. And second, remember what Richard Henry Lee said. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men, and I'm going to add this, good women, to do nothing. It's your freedoms, ladies and gentlemen. I fought for them, and I continue to fight for them. And I hope you'll be willing to step up and add a little bit more time too. Thank you very much, and Semper Fi from an old Marine. You hoorah!
Thank you so much, Mr. Stouffer.